In this video, you and I are building some walls, painting some carbon fiber, cut some circles, paint some purples, add some decals, then some more, until we build one of the most beautiful race cars ever to exist. But before we start building, let me present you the sponsor of today's video. Skillshare is an online learning community with thousands of inspiring classes for you to choose from and develop new skills, hone your existing arsenal, or just explore for something new to capture your imagination. On the platform, you can find everything from photography and web development to business analytics and productivity classes. My personal favorite so far is the Fundamentals of DSLR Photography by Justin Bridges. The way that he explains how to balance the exposure triangle is super easy to understand, and I'm sure this class will help me to improve the quality of my scale modeling photography. Skillshare is curated specifically for learning, meaning that there are no ads and they are always launching new premium classes. The first 1000 people to use the link in the description will get a 1 month free trial of Skillshare so you can explore your creativity. Now let's get back to the build. Let's kick things off with assembling some of the details that make the body of the car and the rear wing, which is a 4-piece deal, which will need some filler later. After we are done with this, I will sand the body of the car smooth, off camera of course, so I'm not going to bother you with this boring stuff, and then go on to the next step. Hasegawa's XJR-8 is a typical curbside kit. It does lack any kind of detail on the inside, let's say some suspension or engine detail or whatever in this area is missing. One of the key things that we need to do is to add some material and hide these empty spaces, because in some angles it is easy to see through the car, which is not cool. Now that we have the covering done, let's do some detail work. Just the calipers for the brakes and a few cables that are more prominent on the pictures I have seen on the internet. For the cables I use soldering wires of different diameter and I glue them with super glue. The cockpit detail is somewhat decent, and given the fact that we'll have not much vision inside, it's pretty much enough. The headlights is one of the places where this kit lacks visual interest. They're just flat, so for this reason I'm going to make them somewhat like real lights, drilling them out and then using some self-adhesive aluminum tape to represent the shiny reflector surface. Masking the windows from the inside so we can apply a black color. It is pretty straightforward. If you are interested in an in-depth tutorial of masking all kinds of transparencies, you can check out the pop-out banner, or link will be inserted in the description. And now that we have everything ready, it is time to shoot it with some primer. In this case I'm using Surfacer 1500 Black, which is my go-to primer. It has a great coverage, dries really smooth, and in general it is excellent choice. I'm going to use this primer as a paint on some of the details. I'm also going to paint the entire interior of the car with black, so we can limit the possibility to see inside the empty space even more. Removing the masks is easy, but care needs to be taken not to crack the plastic. So now let's go ahead and try to replicate some carbon fiber. I'm using a mesh, and with a dark gray color I'm going to spray over the details through the mesh, which will leave somewhat decent representation of the carbon fiber. I did this to the whole cockpit and also to the diffuser on the back of the car. After the gray, I went ahead and applied some Tamiya smoke paint to shift the color a bit, and I think it looks pretty cool right now, but it's too shiny and it's not something that you can see on a real race car. So I applied a layer of satin varnish, which gave a little bit duller look to everything, and for me more realistic one. I cut some small squares from the Tamiya masking tape and started outlining the seat belts on the seat. It would have been much better to have ribbons for belts, but it would be too much work to remove those molded in belts, so I went ahead and painted them. And here as well I'm going to try to do some fabric replication. I'm going to use a finer mesh which I'll attach to the seat using double-sided tape, and again using the dark gray I'm going to apply the texture. And as you can see, it does have even some three-dimensional texture to it. Now I'm adding some blue to the satin varnish, and I'm going to build the opacity gradually so I don't lose the effect we just did. It turns out that the mesh is creating a good effect, but it is super fine, so it just disappears when you go at any normal viewing distance. Anyhow, after a layer of flat varnish, I painted the buckles with Citadel Runefang steel, which is a pretty nice metallic color. To finalize the seats, I'm going to add the decals on the seat belts. Let's start applying some silver. This is Tamiya lacquer paint. And also some metallic blue-green on this electronic box, the color I saw on some pictures, for the post that is holding the rear wing, and also for the brake calipers I will go for a darker gunmetal color. For the central portion of the rotors, I chose to apply duraluminum from AK Extreme Metal Range, and I cut out masks with my circular cutter, which is very handy. And now it's time to remove the masking to reveal what we've done. So let's go ahead and detail the dashboard. First by adding the decals for the instrument faces. These are pretty neat. I think it would have been better to have the actual dials a little bit further inside the dashboard, but it's not going to be that much visible. Next up, for every single button, I applied some silver, and then using different transparent colors, I picked out the various buttons inside. So Hasegawa have a very nice guide on which button is getting which color, so this is very handy. And to finalize the thing, let's apply some clear varnish on top of the instrument faces, and it just looks much more realistic in my opinion. So now let's attach the seat to the cockpit area. I think it is fair to say that the fit in this kit is far from perfect. Here I found some interesting material, foamy, that has adhesive backing, which is perfect for the headrest. Now, after some more masking, it's time to apply a surface primer. This time I will use the gray surfacer. Probably white would have been better for coverage, but I'm finding it hard to see where I'm going. Now I'm going to apply overall white color. It's a gloss color. Let's let this dry and go ahead and do the wheels. Now first I'm going to drill out the centers so we can have the center hub looking more realistic, and after painting the hole I then painted the nut with some liquid chrome and then covered this with transparent red. Hasegawa provides some kind of decal that's not dry transfer, but it's applied in a different way than the regular decals, and I think it worked well. And it's always nice to have good looking sidewall letters on the wheels. And after a quick satin varnish on top of the decals, let's apply some super glue to the brake discs and install the calipers in place. And then the whole brake assembly on the wheel. And I think it looks pretty good. Now for the color, Hasegawa recommends a 70-30 mixture between the purple and the wine red, but I figured that this does not match the decals very well, so I went with 60% of the purple and 20% wine red and another 20% of a dark blue color, which in my case ended up being 3 ml of the purple and 1 ml of the wine red and dark blue. I masked out roughly where the decals will sit and then painted the purple. This will be the first stage of painting because I'll need to have a better understanding where the decals will go. That's why before I paint the rest, I will apply some decals so I can get the more accurate idea of how to mask the next portion of purple. These decals are overall good. I experienced some of them snapping, but this is to be expected for such long decals, and much care has to be taken to apply them correctly using adhesive and then some decal solutions that melt the decals. But this is much more different than applying decals to an aircraft model, and it takes some experience which I don't have, and probably I will be much better next time I do this. After some masking, let's apply the purple in the other areas where it needs to be, and it is almost a perfect match with the decals. I think we did a very good job matching the paint. While this is drying, let's attach some small details like the exhaust pipes, which are again pretty hard to put in place. Also, the radiator is not ideally made to fit, but anyhow, we get it there. The piece that will hold the spoiler is also quite a complex piece and fragile also. Now that we have everything dry, let's move on to applying the rest of the decals. It is quite a job using all kinds of tools to make the decals stay in position as they should. They're thin, but still it's a decal that has to conform. Touch-ups were necessary here and there, but I did not have any, major issues. And as I said earlier, I think that this experience will help me a lot in my future builds to understand and apply decals. Let me know in the comments if you are interested in this decal application. If you're interested in more in-depth tutorial on applying decals, I have one and I'll link it down in the description or in this pop-up banner that will be in your upper right corner. But it is aircraft decaling, so as I said, it is a little bit different than these huge decals that the cars have. Now a few layers, maybe 5 or 6 of gloss varnish. It is a lacquer varnish, so it needs some time to dry properly, and after a quick polish it will be nice and shiny. I will not show the polishing steps because it's quite tedious, so let's move on to the assembly. The lights, the transparent parts of the lights I will attach using PVA glue, because it will dry transparent and it's not going to be visible. The dashboard goes in, and although the large scale visibility is not very good, especially when you put the windows on. And talking about the windows, let's install the windshield using some PVA glue again. Here the fit is far from perfect, it needed a lot of persuasion. You can see it moved around quite a lot, but some tape fixed it in place until the glue has the time to set. The wing mirrors also do not want to fit very well, and same goes for the aerodynamic shrouds for the headlights. But when all is said and done, it is quite the good looking model from a normal viewing distance, so it's not a problem. Usually car models have a way to snap and then stay together, but this needed to be glued down because it was falling apart. Tires fit okay, they are not glued in, but they are not going anywhere anyways. The wing is also a little bit tricky to install, it moves a lot, it's a big surface and the adhesion surface is not very big, so it is not very easy to install. And the final piece, of course, will be the antenna. Let me know in the comments what you think about the build, the car, what would you like to see, and of course watch more of my videos. I will link my other car builds for you to see, and as always, until next time, happy modeling, fellas!